Hey everybody, I'm Grysko here with the law firm Fausone Bohn, your premier business and corporate law firm in Western Wayne County, serving clients throughout Michigan. I focus my representation on labor and employment, corporate and commercial matters, and assist businesses in all of their commercial and contractual needs. I'm here today to talk to you about COVID-19 vaccinations and whether or not employers can require them from their employees. This is a question that has come up particularly since the government has announced approval of a COVID-19 vaccination. And in fact, we saw that they shipped from a Grand Rapids facility out to distribution centers throughout Michigan and possibly throughout the country just recently within the last week or two. And so employers are wondering, can I or should I require my employees to obtain COVID-19 vaccinations if they're available? And so the answer is actually a little bit more complicated than that. Generally, most employment relationships are at will, which gives the employer quite a bit of latitude in determining what the conditions of employment are going to be. And so actually for a long time now, you've seen in certain industries that vaccinations of various kinds are actually already mandatory for employees. And you might see that, for example, in the healthcare industry, where sometimes employees are required to get vaccinations for things like hepatitis. So this is actually something that's been going on for quite a while, but it's just coming into the national spotlight because of the COVID-19 global health pandemic. What employers need to be aware of, though, is that there are exceptions to almost every rule. So even though, in general, an employer could require employees to obtain COVID-19 vaccinations, the exceptions are just as important and in some ways almost just as broad as the general rule. For example, if an employee has a legitimate religious objection to obtaining the vaccination, then that's something that the employer would have to take into consideration and potentially make an accommodation for. Similarly, employees may have medical conditions that prevent them or cause complications for them in getting vaccines. And so a legitimate disability might also be a reason that an employer would have to make an accommodation. So these are all things to keep in mind when you're considering whether or not to require COVID-19 vaccines of your employees. And I think in general, the approach that most businesses are going to take here is to encourage and facilitate employees getting the vaccine, but not necessarily mandate it as a condition of employment. And businesses are going to have to take into consideration the fact that some employees may have very strong objections to getting the vaccine. So as an employer, are you really prepared to possibly lay off maybe half your workforce that doesn't want to get the vaccine? Or would you rather just incentivize it in a certain way versus making it a condition of employment? Now, another thing to keep in mind from a liability standpoint is that as an employer, if you're requiring employees to get the COVID-19 vaccine, then are you also potentially opening yourself up to lawsuits if the employee experiences an adverse reaction to the vaccine or negative side effects or even potentially lasting side effects? I think vaccine litigation in this country has been at times very, very costly for employers. So it is something to take into consideration when you're formulating your COVID-19 response and possible vaccination policy. And if you need help with any of these issues, please feel free to reach out to us here at the law firm Fausone Bohn. I'm Grysko. I spend quite a bit of my practice advising employers these days on COVID-19 response issues. So feel free to reach out to me at 248-380-0000 and just ask for Brandon. Thanks for watching. See you next time.